Hi there, I'm David Schilla, and I'm gonna tell you guys how to make Canada Crumblers. They're a sort of mapley, chocolatey, you know, just all around treat of a cookie. But if you don't like maple, then you don't like chocolate, then you'll probably not like this. So what you're gonna want is you're gonna want to gather all the ingredients. You're gonna want to get 2 eggs, 3/4 a cup butter, half cup dehydrated honey, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 3/4 cup flour, half cup maple and brown sugar oatmeal, half cup cocoa, half teaspoon salt, 9 crushed Oreos, and a teaspoon of baking soda. You're going to also want a ungreased cookie sheet. You're going to want a spatula, and you're going to want some oven mitts and 2 large mixing bowls, just so you can deal with all the other process. So first thing you're going to want to do, as with all cooking, is you're going to want to preheat the oven, and you're going to do this so that it'll be warm enough by the time that your cookie batter is done that you can put it in and you can start baking immediately. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for it to wake up to heat up, which takes a while, so you don't want that. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get one of those large mixing bowls and you're going to want to put the butter and dehydrated honey into it, and you're going to want to cream it until they're light and fluffy. If the butter is too firm when you start and you can't work with it really well, something you can do is you can heat it up in the microwave for about 15 seconds and then it should be really easy to mix it in with the honey. When you're done, it should look something like this. If it doesn't, that's okay. My butter was a little bit more firm and I just kind of beat it in anyways. But for the most part, it should be one homogeneous blob of butter and honey at this point and nothing else. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add the vanilla and the 2 eggs, and then you're going to want to mix them well. And when they're mixed well, they should look something like this. It's going to look really, really liquidy and kind of sort of like cottage cheese. So once it looks something like that, you should be well off. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to the add in a separate bowl. You're going to want to add the oatmeal, the cocoa, the baking soda, and the salt, and you're going to want to combine them all into one powdery mix. I did not in this photo because I was just going to throw it all in at once, but it's a lot easier if you combine it in this and then stir it slowly into the wet ingredients. And once you stir it slowly into the wet ingredients, it should look something like this. It's going to be mostly brown and you're going to see the oatmeal flakes everywhere. You just don't want any of it to be still liquidy, oh, still mostly liquidy, and you don't want any of the dry ingredients to be stuck to the side. Technique you can use at this point, if you haven't been already, is you can take your fork, and I recommend using a fork at this point, um, and you're going to want to make little circles down at the bottom of the mixture, and you're going to want to do that pretty fast. And if you do that, then it should mix them all pretty well together, and you should end up with something like this. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add the Oreos. You're going to want to crush them up if they aren't already crushed, and they should be, you know, pretty Oreo-like. Crush them up, and then you add half a cup of the flour, and you're going to want to stir that half cup of flour in until it's no longer visible. After it's no longer visible, then you're going to want to add another 1/4 cup of flour and mix that until you can't see that flour either. It should all be pretty much one color. It should all be a lighter shade of brown, but not very. Uh, and once you're done with that, you're going to take the batter and you're going to put it onto the cookie sheet in 2 tablespoon portions. And those portions will need to be flattened to about 1.5 inch height because these cookies don't expand very well. So if you just leave them on there as is, as opposed to a normal cookie, they won't flatten out. They'll just kind of turn into a bigger version of the shape they already were, and you don't want that. You want them to be more cookie-like than not. So you flatten them. And 1.5 inch is just a recommendation. You could still technically make them 2.5, 3, and it should turn out pretty fine. They'd just be slightly bigger cookies. Once you're done with that, you place them in the bottom rack of the oven. I know the picture's upside down and my thumb's in the way, but you're going to want to put it on the bottom rack of the oven and you're going to want to bake it for 7 minutes on the lowest rack. And then you're going to want to pull them out and turn around 180 degrees, put it on the top rack, and bake it for 3 minutes longer. The reason you do this is even though most ovens say that they have even sort of heat, they really don't. So you're going to want to flip them 180 degrees. Otherwise, one side will be more solid than the rest, and you don't want that. You want them all to be about the same, and you want them to be all pretty, still pretty squishy at the end, but not liquid. And once you're done baking them in the oven for 3 more minutes, you pull them out, leave them somewhere where they can cool for 2 to 3 minutes, or however long it takes for them to become more firm than they were in the oven. And when they're slightly firm, you're going to want to move them over to a wire rack or paper towel or whatever. You're going to want to line them up or something so that they can cool really well. And you're going to want to repeat the whole baking process until no batter remains. And then you should end up with, I want to say, about 18 cookies. And you're done. I hope this worked for you, and I hope it tastes as well as it came out for me. But good luck and have fun.